Hey y'all, it's Amanda. Welcome back to my channel. And today we're going to talk about general contemporary fiction book recommendations. This is going to be a continuation of my book recommendations series video by genre, and this is going to be like general contemporary fiction recommendations. I know many of you like just books that don't have any romance or very light romance. If it does, just very general contemporary fiction, more of that family drama story, all of that stuff. And most of the books I don't own anymore, but I still would recommend them. So there's only one that I own out of this whole list still, but we here. I'm going to put the pictures on the screen as usual. So first on this list is actually one I've not talked about in a while, and that is Bless Your Heart, Ray Sutton. Let me just say, bless your heart, honey. You know that is one of my favorite sayings. We live in the South. It's part of it, right? But this was a really good book full of Southern comfort. I gave it 4 stars. Really enjoyed it. It's kind of like you need to be grabbing a glass of sweet tea when you're reading this, okay? This is by, is it Susanna B. Lewis? Yeah, Susanna B. Lewis. I will have to look at my notes because some of these I haven't read in a while. But this is about a 36-year-old woman named Ray Sutton, and she is going through a lot of hardships in her life. She had a divorce. I think her mother passed away, all this stuff, and to cancer. And so Ray just really doesn't know how to begin again. She has a 14-year-old daughter. There's all this stuff. And God was with her throughout this whole process, and I loved seeing her journey to finding peace among the chaos in this. The ending lacked a little bit as far as like the romance stuff, but like I really liked the actual story more so than the romance that was in this. There's a trigger here, of course, for trauma, losing a loved one. Her mother had passed away and she had a divorce, all this stuff that she went through. But the whole beginning of this book starts off at a funeral, her mother's funeral. There's glimpses of like the end of her mother's life with Ray, and there's a lot of grief and heartbreak, but there's also this element of forgiveness and love and just starting anew, mercy and grace, how the Lord gives true peace and comfort in all of our pain that we go through. In this, Ray ends up moving into her mother's home. She tries to start this new life. Her mother had left all these little letters in her home for her, and I really liked that. It was almost like she was still there with her even after she was gone, and it was such a comfort to Ray. And it was just beautiful little details in the story that I think she would find them just at the moment she needed her mom's advice. Ray ends up starting this little new relationship with her daughter's basketball coach, and for the first time in a long time, she kind of feels like things are starting to fall back into place, but then she's kind of like, are things gonna work out? She's not sure if she should start a new relationship with being a mom. She's trying to start a new business, and there's all this stuff happening. She doesn't really know if she needs to continue this. And a big part of this is she meets, like, I think it's every month, with these women that used to be friends with her mom, I want to say, the Third Thursday ladies. And they give the best advice. I love them so much. It's almost just like drinking a glass of sweet tea on the front porch with them. And it was just, I really liked that part as well. And I think my most favorite part about this story is the meetings that she has with the Third Thursday ladies. Yeah, I think Ray really found this comfort in her mom's friends. I loved how they would like visit the hospital to help others, or like go comfort someone who recently had lost a loved one in passing away. Just making sure to do for others. That was nice to see. I know I don't own this anymore. I did sell it because I knew I wasn't going to reread it at any time, but it was one that I still remember today that I really enjoyed, and I highly recommend. The romance, like I said, wasn't exactly, it didn't need to be in there, honestly. I feel like the rest of this was the perfect story. If you just didn't have the romance in there, I'd have been fine with it, The next one on my list is one I read this year, and that is The Best Summer of Our Lives by Rachel Hauck, however you say her name. This story was very interesting. I don't own this anymore. I actually tried to mail it to my girl Sky because she loves Rachel and all her books. But guess what? got lost in the mail. So somebody has it somewhere. But anyway, I was trying to send it to her. It got gone. But hey, we here. It's fine. Y'all remember I did a reading vlog with this, and I teared up at the end of this. It was very emotional. I'll leave it down below. But I know I talked a lot about Ray Sutton, but I'm not going to talk as much about this one. This is just a real good coming of age Christian contemporary story. It has a very unique way of talking about faith that I think will be light enough to minister to other people or get them interested in the Lord, okay? We have a dual timeline here. Takes place primarily in 1977, and we have glimpses of 1997. There are 20 years that span. There's 4 best friends, lots of secrets, some encounters with the Lord, and yeah, I really enjoyed these 4 seasons, we'll say, because their names were, what was their names? Summer, autumn, spring, and snow. So yeah, we followed their journey like right out of high school, and they go to be camp counselors in the summer of 77. Because of a prank they did in high school. A lot of things happen. They have a falling out. The reason it's not 5 stars, I had a hard time with like differentiating some of the sisters between the different point of views, but overall I still really enjoyed it. I really liked Rachel's author's note in this. She reminds us to cling to the Lord in our desert times of life. Very unique, a very different type of story. It's hard to explain. The content warnings, it's overall clean. There's a very brief mention of 3 young girls who were kidnapped and sexually assaulted and killed at another camp. But it's very brief. And so you could easily skip over that, but I need to mention that just because of the type of content that is. We do have some discussions kind of talking about, sex before marriage, adultery, teenage pregnancy, and dealing with divorce. Lots of things like from the 70s discussed in this. And even in the 90s, just a lot of this stuff discussed at length. But again, very powerful story about how the Lord's always with you through no matter what you go through. So highly recommend this. It's just a very, very interesting story. Now, we could not go talking about general contemporary fiction without talking about The Extraordinary Deaths of Mrs. Kipp by Sarah Brunsfold. I've talked a lot about this lately, so again, I'm going to be brief, but there were some quotes in here. I will always let the Lord guide me because he is at my right hand and I will not be shaken. That's Psalm 16:8. The mark of authentic love is dying 1,000 deaths to self. We'll love to see that. So, just some really great quotes in this, nonetheless. Her debut novel. She's a new one coming out in January. I'm definitely going to read it. It touched my heart. It took the world by storm. We have Mrs. Kipp and we have Aiden Kelly. She is a reporter who is assigned to write Mrs. Kipp's obituary. And at first you're just like, look here, Aiden, you need to get it together, honey. But she goes through a very, very impactful transformation with Mrs. Kipp. Mrs. Kipp has such wisdom and just so much to learn from. And Aiden truly learned a lot from her. And it was just beautiful. Mrs. Kipp reminded me of my great-grandmother, full of the spunk and energy. Just, she's 79 years old. And you don't see a lot of books published about a main character being an elderly person. We know that Mrs. Kipp doesn't have long to live. She's going to pass away. We all know this. She's ready to let everybody know about her journey with the Lord and just how she was a true servant of him. And she shows just a great example for Aiden, I think, in this. And what it means to have a servant heart and help others and stand strong in the Lord in all circumstances. So, yeah, I think there's so much to be learned from this. I'd love to reread it and annotate it. Because I want to say my girl Sky annotated this. And I think that would be a great idea. There's so many great quotes in this. And, we see some of her adventures in life. It's just great. So yeah, my heart was pretty full with this after I read it for a very long time. So definitely a good one. The next book I want to talk about, I do not own anymore, but because I don't plan to reread it, but I'm so glad that I did read it. And that is Where the Blue Sky Begins by Katie Poner, however you say her name, I can't remember now. But this was a Christian contemporary fiction, and it's also about a character who is dying. She said it was bladder cancer. I can't remember exactly, but Either way, we have Eunice Parker and Eric Larson. Eric is 32, and his Uncle Jack sends him to this small rural town in Montana. And he's all like, oh, I don't want to be here. You know, this is just a small town, podunk town for nothing. Like, he's just like, don't want to be there, you know. And then we have this 46-year-old named Eunice, and she's got a terminal illness, so she's kind of come to terms with her dying, and she has given herself a goal to apologize to everyone on her forgiveness list before she dies. And you know, she has cancer, so you know, only a few months to live, and so she kind of goes through all the emotions from the diagnosis. But in the end, she knows where she's going. She talks to God very often in this book and about how she feels about everything in life. And I had a very emotional roller coaster experience with this book. It was, you know, I wasn't real sure at first if there was going to be romance involved with this at all, but no, it definitely was not. Eric is driving through this small town, basically, when he hits or knocks Eunice off of her bike or scooter, whatever it was. And that was her only transportation at the time. He ends up breaking it. Eunice realizes that Eric is her neighbor, and she's like, I'm not going to call the cops on him. You know, hey, I'm going to kind of blackmail you and say, you knocked me off the road. You broke my scooter. I'm going to call the cops unless you drive me around all these places and take me to these people I need to talk to. The story takes off from there as Eunice and Eric kind of get to know each other in that short time period, and he sees what she's doing, an unlikely friendship that they form. And yeah, I really enjoyed this. I had a vlog, and I will link it. It's pretty old, but like at the end of that video, the end of this book made me cry. I wasn't sure about this book for a while, you guys. Like, there was just something, because Eric was so arrogant, you know, and I wasn't as connected 100% with this. But at the very end of this, like, you know, he went out of his way to just truly help Eunice in every circumstance. She becomes just a true friend for him, and it touched my heart. You know, I was truly crying, you know. And the reason that this is called Where the Blue Sky Begins, you know, like they throw the title in there. You know, it's like, it really hit me in the feels. I remember crying about that. And it was just beautiful. So, and one thing, I have a note in here about this. I just remembered. Look here. Tiffany. There was a girl named Tiffany in this book. That's another reason it wasn't 5-star. There is some faith growth I would have liked to seen in Eric a little bit. Because we kind of got this random romance girl that, like, he ain't even really involved with her, Tiffany, in here. That did not need to be in here. It was weird. I didn't really understand that. But overall, I still really liked it. You know, the main story of it. It makes you think about forgiveness of others, letting things go, like don't let things harbor and fester until it's too late, kind of thing. And one thing I quoted was, in the end, it only matters where you stand with one person to get to the other side. That's the Lord. And it's just beautiful. So the next book on this list is The Art of Losing Yourself by Katie Ganchert. I did a reading vlog for this. It was one of Oshina's favorites, so I will leave that link down below, where I read some of my friends' favorite books. And this is my first Katie Ganchert book, and I'm so glad that I read it. Very emotional, very, very emotional story of just characters who truly went through some hard things, you know. And it was almost a 5-star read. The ending did fall a little bit flat for me, but, you know, it kind of ended too abruptly. I wanted a little bit more resolution with the characters, but I still really enjoyed it. You know, we have these two sisters named Carmen and Gracie. And Carmen, she is a famous Florida meteorologist, and she has her husband, Ben, and he's like this handsome, popular football coach. And on the outside, they kind of look like they have it all together, but they're hurting because she has suffered through 6 miscarriages. So there's a trigger warning in this book. Their marriage is struggling, all of that stuff, right? Then we have Gracie, Carmen's 17-year-old sister, and she's struggling from things with her mother's addiction. There's an age gap between them. So, you know, Carmen is kind of like having to take care of Gracie a lot, you know, throughout this process. And, you know, she definitely experiences more of like the stuff with her mother's alcohol addiction, and she's with the wrong crowd in school and all this stuff. And so she runs away. She ends up at Carmen's house and her aunt's old boarded up motel. Her aunt does have Alzheimer's or dementia. It was hard to watch, and to see Carmen and Gracie and their sisterhood bond start to reform, and their relationship grow, and you know, Carmen kind of takes in Gracie, and you start to wonder how they're both gonna, the Lord's gonna use both of them in each other's circumstances in this broken down motel to kind of bring each other back to life here, because they're both struggling through so many things. So yeah, very emotional. Okay, all of these are very emotional books, you know what I'm saying? Like, most of the time, general contemporary fiction is very emotional. So the last one on the list is Heirlooms by Sandra Bird. I gave it 3.5 stars and rounded it up to 4 on Goodreads. And this is just a multi-generational story. It's very interesting. There are parts that I didn't love, but overall, I think a lot of y'all might like this. Very multi-generational layered story between Helen, a Navy widow, who she opens up her home to this refugee, a Korean refugee named Choi. Both Choi and Helen's husbands passed away in the Korean War. So, like, that's their connection. And it's a dual timeline story. So we follow Helen and Choi's story in 1958, and then we cut to their granddaughters in present day, Cassidy and Grace. And, you know, they start to kind of dig into the past, Cassidy and Grace, and they start to unearth all these long lost secrets and these heirlooms that would have been in their families, and just things that they never expected. So yeah, I think for me, there was some triggering topics in this that I remember personally throughout the reading process: infertility, child loss, grief. There was mistreatment of children with special needs, and like how they would have treated them in the 1950s. I mean, I think it's important to mention this. It's to bring awareness to what happened in the past, but it was also hard for me to read through, honestly, because I'm an autism mama, I'll say. So it was hard personally. I can't remember if I said this or not. Loss of a family member as well was in here. But, you know, I do appreciate the advocacy for children with Down syndrome and autism. It means a lot to me to see that today and to shed light on what happened. But, you know, it was very hard to read for me personally. But overall, I still really like the dual timeline of the story, how they were connected to each other. Did a really great job with that. You know, I was just very, like, mixed feelings when I first read it. So I don't know how I'd feel today, but, you know, it had this perfect example of self-sacrificial friendship, and they were just very strong women, a great example of strong women. So yeah, I think that if you like gardening and flowers, that's also an added bonus as well. You're going to like this book. There was a lot of gardening details, and, you know, just some really nice storyline about a past love. They're just a really good general contemporary fiction story that I think a lot of you all would like if you like good female friendships and stuff. And that's it, y'all. I have about lost my voice. This is the 5th video I filmed, and I wasn't going to film this, but I was like, I might as well. I've got it written down. Let's go. You know, some of your favorite general contemporary fiction stories down below in the comments. And have you read any of these books? All that stuff. Let's chat below. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all in my next one. Bye, y'all.